On a train, in a bus, in a car, on the way to your job. All alone with your kids, with your wife, or with your dog. You can listen anywhere, you can listen everywhere, to the Philip Malowney podcast.
Hi, welcome back to the latest instalment of the Philip Malowney podcast. I've got a very special show today. I'm joined by pretty much all of my great school friends. I've got Martin Gilbert here, I've got Theo Georghiades, I've got Blue, and I've got Rafael Alleyne. And they've all managed to Skype in. We're gonna work through this as best as possible, but hopefully we have a good catch up, a great chat, and some possible topical debate. So joining me are these gentlemen.
Yeah, Phil.
Hi.
Well,
Phil, mate. Yeah, nice to be here.
Yeah, look at this. What an esteemed crowd what we've got here. I love it. So kicking us off then. Everybody well. It's probably not good to ask like one single question for a whole group to answer, isn't it? So if I pick you guys out initially, I'll go to you first, Raf, if that's all right. Mr. Alleyne, as some of the viewers may know him. He's been quite busy recently. He's recently changed jobs, and he's now. Well, I'll let you tell us where you are and what you're doing.
Thanks, Phil. So I've been teaching for 20 years now. Time flies, but yeah, my latest job, I'm in a school in Islington, London Screen Academy. So it's a behind the screens film school. So all the students post 16 learn about writing, camera work, that kind of thing. So very specialist, my first sort of specialist school. And I'm assistant principal there, just responsible for pastoral care and inclusion. So yeah, I don't get to teach the fun stuff, but yeah, I really like supporting that particular age group. It's been good.
Ah, fantastic. Oh, that's good to hear. Raf, thank you. Let's get a quick intro from Blue here. Blue, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good, Phil. How you doing, sir?
I'm over the moon that you could join us. I know you got a busy schedule.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we can pretend. But yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. Obviously, I'm at TfL now, Transport for London, work for them now. My history in terms of my background mainly was music. Music was what I was brought up in, a musical family. Football also. Obviously, I joined you lot late at school because I got shipped off to the Caribbean for being a naughty boy young on in my life, and I got brought back over. And it was great to meet you guys. My salvation.
Wow.
And then, since then, I've worked in a few different fields. I've continued my music as a hobby, my football management, as you know, Phil, because you've been on that journey with me as well.
Certainly have.
Also worked in care with young people and autism, and mentoring. But yeah, I just enjoy doing my thing right now, just at TfL and just looking after my children. My son's doing boxing. One of them's musical. The other one's just getting on with his life. He's a teenager doing his thing. And that's it, still doing the football management. And that's about it, really.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I like it. Mr. Gilbert, how you doing, sir?
Good, thank you, Philip. Good, thank you. And thank you so much for the invite as well.
Mate, I am over the moon. Martin was the first one on this call, and we had a quick catch up around just the fact that we haven't seen each other in so many years, but he hasn't changed a bit. Just take if you just take the glasses off, put a Wiseman blazer on, stick a football in his hand, and a pair of trousers that are too short. He's there.
You're always big.
What are you saying, Martin?
Good, mate. Good. I'll try and fit in the last 20 years. Left school with you guys when was it, 93?
I think, yeah.
Left there. I couldn't wait to get out of school. I went to Hounslow College for 3 years. I did art and design, art as some of you may know, is one of my passions, as is technology. I did a course there for covering a 3-year period. Left there, I went to the University of East Anglia for 3.5 years. Did a degree in industrial and product design. I stayed up in East Anglia for a little bit. Worked for a few hi-fi companies in East Anglia and in Lincolnshire for a couple of years, designing consumer electronics and hi-fi. Then I left there. I left that part of the world. Went to go and live in the Republic of Ireland for 2 years. County Galway, designing hi-fi there, which was a blast, which got me into film design as well. And then I came back and bummed around for a year because I wanted to take a small break. Got into glass and furniture, designing that. And then I got a bit bored, and I kind of veered into technology, where I am today. So today, what I do now is I work for a Canadian business, and I kind of manage technology in Europe, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. So yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, Mr. Gilbert. That's wonderful. What a fantastic CV there, mate. I'm certainly like to delve into some more aspects of that. But moving on to yourself there, Theo. How's it going, buddy? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. Tell us about you.
Well, after bumming around school with you lot, I've been in North London for the last 17 years now. I live in Barnet. Met Angela in 2003. 2 boys, 11 and 13. And boys will be boys, especially the younger one, Lucas and Chris I've got. But my last 20 odd years, I've only ever worked at Fuji. My passion for photography from school carried on. And as you know, I worked my way through the ranks of Fuji and been delved in photography and digital cameras for the last 20 odd years. And it's had its ups and downs, but it's taken me all around the world, which is amazing. Not as much as Pete, but I've had a fair few trips: Japan, America, all around Europe. So yeah, it's been good. It's been exciting.
Nice. That's fantastic. So we've got a really good mix of folk here. I think so. I don't have any necessarily pre-prepared questions as such, but it's great to see that we're all healthy and all the rest of it. But we can't help the elephant in the room at the moment, which is looking at things like Black History Month, Black Lives Matter movement, the coronavirus, the amount of issues like NHS issues and what have you that's going on at the moment. Brexit, we've got Donald Trump and Joe Biden and all the rest of it. So, lads, who wants what? Pick a topic. What do you like? What's your thing? I mean, I think one of the things that I'd like to talk about is, Martin, you're saying that you're dealing with all these different regions, Oceania, the Europe and Middle East.
Yep.
Is that? Yep. And then obviously the American markets and things like that. So how has things been affected in regards to your work? I mean, I'm assuming that there's a lot of logistical nightmares at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's been tough. The last kind of 8 months has been really tough. We've had to let a few people go, which is always not a very nice thing, especially when they're at the very beginnings of their careers. You kind of look back and you think, when you look back about when you were young and when you were starting in your career, and then you've got to deal with telling a 22-year-old, I'm sorry, but what I promised you six months ago is not going to come to fruition. That's a very difficult conversation to have with someone like that, because they're just starting out, and their first thing is you want to kind of encourage them, you want to give them some optimism, but it's a very difficult thing to actually do. So, for example, take Melbourne in Australia. Melbourne's been in a series of lockdowns over the last 8 months. They've had a full-time lockdown, they've had a partial one, then they went into a full-time one again. So psychologically, it impacts people. Whereas if you compare Melbourne to, say, Cairo or Rabat in Morocco, there is no lockdown. Or there is a minimal lockdown compared to what you have in the UK or in Australia. In Toronto, it's very much like London is. Same with Boston, and same with San Francisco as well. So yeah, and also San Francisco has had to deal with wildfires too. So there's loads of there's loads of psychological issues going on right now with various people, and being now kind of being, say, a people manager, you realise that you have to treat people in a different way. You may treat one person one way, you treat one in another. It just depends on how kind of receptive they are to your ideas and to your thoughts. So yeah.
So you have to be quite agile in that respect.
Yeah, and it certainly keeps you on your toes, because after you've had a Zoom call for 1.5 hours, I mean, you don't know what that person was going through before they got on that call. You don't know what they're going through after they've come off the call.
Yeah.
So you've got to be really careful in kind of what you say, but at the same time, you've got to try and be as kind of transparent as you possibly can. So yeah.
That's I think, is that something similar for you there, Theo, in your industry?
Yeah, Martin makes a really good point. I think one thing I've learned a lot these last 8-9 months really is how to deal with people's emotions, and people have coped. Some people have coped really well with it. Some people have coped really badly with it. And really, over the last actually 6 weeks, a lot of members of my team have really struggled with the thought that we're going to go back into the second wave. And I've had to deal with more staff issues over the last few weeks, more than I've ever had to deal with over the last 10 years. And it's hard. It's hard because really none of us have experienced things like this. And the difficulty is, especially when you're a manager, you almost got to just suck it up and deal with it and deal with your staff. And the trouble, no one ever asks you how you are, how you've coped with it. You know, everyone just expects, because you're a manager, you're right. You know what I mean? So
there's a really high expectation just to sort of absorb and absorb and absorb.
It is.
As much.
Listen, and you've got to find a way of absorbing all this, and almost not to be a fountain of knowledge, just be as that soundboard to help. You know what I mean? But it's tough on all of us. You know what I mean? It's been, and COVID probably affected us in different ways. Some people more than others. I've never been to so many funerals in just a short space of time. I know the Greek community in North London, it hit us quite hard. There was just under 400 deaths in the North London area from Greeks and Greek Cypriots, which was pretty hard. And you know what we're like, Phil, is like everyone knows everyone.
Very close community. Yeah.
You know, my dad had it. He was in hospital for 3 weeks, and it was just horrendous. Yeah.
I think at the beginning of this, there was, I suppose you'd be forgiven of thinking like, oh, it's not going to affect me, or I don't know anybody with it, and all the rest of it. But the longer time goes on, I'm starting to hear people pretty close who are really getting affected by it. In sort of catching the virus, isolating, and what have you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how the rest of you guys have been affected by that. Ty, Raf?
Yeah, I think on a personal level, I was just thinking what you guys were just saying. I think like in my line of work, there's always like developing an intervention for some kind of emotional support, behaviour support, academic support, and it was just really amplified. And like you say, Phil, like I definitely went into this thinking it probably isn't gonna be something that blows over. Definitely took it seriously. Like I went into full lockdown mode, and like because our whole school did. And I was like, quite proud of not going outside and just like, if we all nail it now, I'll be all right by June, July, that kind of attitude. But yeah, there was a lot to soak up. And just thinking about what the guy said, like in relation to managing people, it was, for me, it felt like more of the same, but times 10, because you were getting it like from parents who needed more one-to-one support. Like I had to do more sort of say one-to-one. It's all hands to the deck. So I've got therapists in my team, for example, pastoral leaders in my team. I couldn't just rely on them. Like we all had to like deal with parents who were dealing with their children of a particular age, having them full time. It exposed so much, so between parents just struggling with having their children in the house that are 16 to 18 years old full time, between that situation, between COVID and bereavements that students were going through, staff. Then we had George Floyd. Then there was a response to that. Everything was so amplified, like times 10. And it was trying to be logical at a time like that was a bit dangerous as well, because there's a part of me that's thinking, while you have to apply some level of reason and logic, you also have to be careful to not dampen people with logic when they're not ready for that. Like people want to express themselves. I mean, I know we'll probably talk about George Floyd later because that was a whole chapter in my school, but it was difficult on a personal level. I didn't have anyone immediately close that like necessarily suffered, but it was getting closer. It was getting closer and closer. Like people start knowing people, and then it's like you're just waiting, and to this point, been still, which is weird, by the way. Like I had a lot of like deaths, like friends that have lost people, lost parents and stuff. Hasn't been related to COVID, which is the strangest thing. But it's been a mad year, 2020.
God, hasn't it just? Ty, anything you want to add on to tag on to that?
Yeah. So for me, I think more so for me, rather than the actual virus itself affecting me or anybody close to myself, I think it's more affected people. What I'm more worried about in terms of how I think that everybody's not taking it too seriously, but for me, blowing everything out of proportion and going to extreme levels of pandemonium and so on and so forth. I just don't think that half the stuff is necessary personally, because it's all contradictory. I don't know how you guys feel about that, and that's just my personal opinion.
No, listen, it doesn't matter how we feel about it, mate. I want to hear what you think and how you feel.
Personally, I don't think a lot of it makes sense. Not a lot of it adds up in terms of what they first said about what the virus is, what it's about, how you're affected by it. Yeah, we can say that we learn more about it so as it progresses, but then still a lot of the stuff they say they've learned, they're not acting on it, because there's still a lot of contradictory stuff going on in and around in terms of some places locking down where you're allowed to be, rule of 6. How does that rule of 6 apply only in one place and not in another? For me, a lot of it doesn't make sense. And I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist. So me and the bigger picture and the grand scheme of things, I believe there's a lot more to it, and there's more of an agenda with this whole COVID thing rather than it actually being a thing. I mean, I'm not completely sold on it, if I'm being absolutely honest.
Well, Ty, I think I love a conspiracy theory. I love a conspiracy theory, and I'm not gonna put the reins on you because I'd love to see you just gallop away with that one. But what I wanted to look at is something you mentioned there, in regards to like your you can see like a hypocrisy, or you can see like a almost like a double standard. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but tell me if I'm wrong. And then Raf, does that have like a correlation with, does that have any synergy with the fact that what you said about having to apply logic and things to certain situations? So you've got, on one hand, you've got the COVID. There's a degree of hypocrisy in regards to, I guess, in the geographical differences between Scotland, Wales, and England, and then you've got people who are like stuck indoors in lockdown. You've got this situation that happens in America, and then people are just ready to ignite almost. Do you see a sort of correlation between what was going on in the undertones and then what the results were when something happened like this?
Is that for me?
Yes, Raf, please.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry. Yes. So
sorry. Like one of the things that I've said, and again, like I try to make sense out of most of these things. I think that there's like a world of protocols and there's a world of reality. And I feel like if I look at how schools are doing things, like we can't all be honestly saying that if we keep our kids in bubbles, for example, which we're doing, and we have one-way systems, which we're doing, that means that all those children are safe, particularly with our age group. And we've got it easy in a 16 to 18 school in comparison to what's going on in like the school that I just come from, standard secondary, with year 7 up to year 13. Because when those students leave, and which everyone will say, when they're literally stepping outside our doors, all them bubbles are mixing. They're all traveling together. So there is a reality, which I'm saying, right. So then I try to make sense out of that, because the average person, if you're a staff member that's just lost someone due to COVID, and you see that, and you have to come to work, you're questioning that more than I am personally. Like, you're probably thinking, what's going on here? What's going on? You're trying to make sense out of this madness. Whereas I'm looking at it and I'm saying, right, it doesn't make sense. Like Blue said, it doesn't add up. But is this meant to be one layer of prevention? Are we seeing this as, well, we could mix them all up in our school and have an infection rate be a little bit higher, or are we trying to eat away at that infection rate by doing whatever we can? And I don't think that is actually the answer personally, but it's the only thing that makes logical sense for me to say to someone who is either a staff member or a parent who's worried about their child or whatever else, and say why we're doing what we're doing. Because if I don't say that, then what are we doing here? Like, let's not have school then, let's also stay at home. And that's kind of how I see it. But there's definitely people benefiting from the situation. I think of everything. I've listened to so many other podcasts, by the way, recently, where the same, whether it be about Black Lives Matter, whether it be about COVID, in any situation, I always feel there are people that look to exploit and benefit. But I don't like looking to those as my reference point, if that makes sense. Otherwise, you find yourself going back and forth like two extremes. There's somewhere in the middle where someone is genuinely trying to work on something, or genuinely trying to find an answer to something. But there's also a percentage of people that are definitely rubbing their hands together, as this is like brilliant for them.
Yeah. So where there's confusion, there's cash.
Yeah.
Right. That old adage.
Yeah.
And
someone's always benefiting from a crisis. It's always the case. And even though like our family went through like the stress of my dad being in hospital for 3 weeks, and thank God, touch wood, he came out all right. But I also agree that there's something else going on. I mean, even though I've seen it firsthand, that does a virus exist? Well, something exists, because he was pretty unwell, right? Whether it's a virus or whatever it is, something's definitely going on. But I agree with the others that it's confusing, because the whole message currently is contradictory. How we mix. Prime example, right? I can go to the office right now and mix with my brother, yeah, because we work together. but I can't go to his house. Yeah, that doesn't make sense at all. Yeah,
Exactly.
right. I can have a business dinner with 30 people, right? But I can only have a wedding for 15 people, right?
Wow.
Or
I didn't know that about business dinners.
well, there's a loophole. Yeah, this is so the loophole. A lot of restaurants recently, in the last week or so, have been sending floods of emails. Well, I've had floods of emails. I'm on, before I entertain a lot through business, etc., right? So I've had a whole host of emails saying that I can hire a private dining room, yeah, and have a business meal, yeah, for up to 30 people.
That is crazy.
It's related.
That is crazy. So
Right.
therein lies this sort of weird kind of confusion around the rules.
Well, because it's like,
Sorry, carry on, please.
Restaurants are supposed to only allow you to do bookings for the same household, right? I went last week. I went out for Angela's birthday, right? It was the four of us. Fine, no problem. Sat around the restaurant, packed. Yeah. There was no way every single one of those tables was from the same household. No
Right.
chance, right? And there's no way they were there for a business dinner either. Yeah. Angela made a booking the other day, didn't get asked a thing, right? Actually said it's for a friend's 40th birthday. Yeah. Restaurant, yeah, no problem. Just don't be late. Yeah. I'll get a credit card. Yeah. The problem is none of this is being policed. So I think if we compare the first lockdown period, it was the same rule for everyone, right? There was none of this. Well, in Wales it's this, and in Scotland it's this, and in Nottingham it's this, and in London it's that. And then now, because people are sick and tired of it, you're like, you lot making no sense, right? So the problem is people are going to make up their own rules, and they're going to just do what they want, right? Because ultimately, the police aren't going to knock on the door and say how many people are in there. Is it 5? Is it 6? Is it 8? Right?
Yeah.
They don't care about that. They care about big stuff like breaking up a underground wedding or this, that, and the other where there's 200 people, right? Because that's where the big fines come, don't they? Yeah. It's just
So they don't want it. So they're going for the low hanging fruits and
Yeah.
picking up those bits and pieces. Yeah, which is frustrating, right?
And it's all very politicized, isn't it? I mean, and we probably got it easy in comparison to America. Like they were politicizing potential drug treatment from way back, like probably April. Like people were coming out of things, and it was like a Democrat thing or it was a Republican thing.
Yeah.
And that's, obviously benefiting one person as well. So when we start seeing all these different areas and people knocking the government for a decision, none of it ever is genuine. Whether you agree with it or not, it's like they're not coming from the same place when they're criticizing. They're doing it for political reasons. And I think that's why it's all very messy and very difficult to, I wouldn't even say work out the truth, just kind of work out where people are coming from, with all this. And you tend to look for facts, like what are the true facts? What are the real things? And then the only thing you have to really go by, if you can, is things like death rates. Like, okay, that kind of tells me something. And even then, but other than that, if I'm honest with you, I'm probably terrible when it comes to knowing what the rules are. All I know is how I operate at work. If it wasn't for work, if I was in a 6-week holiday right now, I would have a clue. Like some of the stuff, the tiers, all that, like I literally find out from other people. I don't watch the news deliberately half the time. I haven't got a clue. I can't even keep up with it.
Yeah. No, it is. I hear exactly what you're saying, and actually, it's a very refreshing point of view to be so so to be so open-minded and to call it out when you see it as being politicized, because I think even having it as a subject on a podcast kind of doesn't help the scenario. Do you know what I mean? Because all it does is it just throws in another layer of almost confusion. It's lovely to have your thoughts and your inputs and what have you, because it is topical. But there is a sort of a degree there of kind of like, are we getting too much politicized information around this situation, what's going on, and does that just throw in another layer of confusion?
Well, you know, they talk about statistics every single day. Like Sky News or BBC, you get an update, right? And you get X amount of new positive cases. But really, they should be talking in percentage terms, really. So the positive cases
Ratio, yeah.
as a percentage of tests, yeah. How does that compare to where we were back in February, March, and April and May? Yeah, because that's not really talked about a lot. Yeah, because if you're doing, they were doing 50,000 tests. No, they were doing 25,000 tests. They were even 10,000 tests a day, right? And then having a high number of cases. But if they're up to 250, 300, 400,000 tests a day now, yeah, and you have 20,000 cases on the back of it, and that percentage is lower technically than what it was back in the main part of it the first time round, then why is there such a panic right now? Yeah, and the reason they aren't doing much for London, right, and they're not really putting into a harsh lockdown is all comes down to economics. Yeah,
Yes,
right.
exactly.
The from a business point of view, London has to function. There's no way. I'll be amazed if we go into national lockdown. Right? They're tippy-toeing around this tier 1, tier 2 for London especially because it will cripple the country. Yeah.
Yeah.
They can afford to do the north, and they can afford to do what they can afford to do the others. They cannot afford to do London, and I'll be shocked. We're coming up to Christmas, right? The busiest time of the year. We're 4 weeks away from Black Friday. From a retail point of view, it's the monster time to spend money. Yeah. Amazon delayed their Prime Day normally in July, and they had it in October. They had it a couple of weeks ago, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all because people are nervous.
I mean, I think what you've got. I mean, I don't know if you guys notice it, but when you look at say a broadcast show like say BBC Breakfast, right? So study that show, right, and study the way that the information is being delivered to you, right? The information being delivered to you is absolutely ridiculous. And why do I say that? Because they shift from one extremely devastating negative story to one happy story, right? And then they shift to one very devastating story to one happy story. If you sit and watch the two worst presenters I've ever seen in my life, which is Dan Walker and Louise Minchin, sit and watch the way they deliver this really, really so-called important information to an audience, right? The way they deliver it is full of mistakes. They interrupt people when they're giving an interview. So what you notice is the person who's doing the interview loses their train of thought. So you never hear the next sentence about what that important thing may have been because it's now lost, right?
Yeah.
Because someone's interrupted it.
I know. I'm sorry, we're out of time for that segment, and now we're going to go on to Little Johnny and his bagpipes.
Exactly right. So,
Yeah.
and there's a huge shift. Even if you watch Sky News, right? I start to watch these news programs and watch the way they kind of deliver really important information. And if you watch too much of that stuff, for me personally, it will make you go nuts because it's totally playing on your emotions and you don't know it, right? And think about this, right? There's 62 million people in this country. Most people, I think it's like 25% or maybe 35%, sit and watch that stuff every single morning. They watch it every single morning, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's obviously a percentage of people that are sick to death of coronavirus, lockdown, tier 1, 2, 3s, and all that stuff, and they're just going out and doing what the hell they want to do, right? And I get that, right? But at the same time, I think they're like what Theo was saying about if it goes into a national lockdown, what will happen? The government know already. They're borrowing 10 times the national, 10 times the national amount of cash that they can borrow, right? So what that means is that if you guys got kids, not their grandkids, but their grandkids will still be paying that debt, right? You still be paying that fucking debt for that amount of time, right? For the next 50, 60 years, because that's a hell of a lot of money to be borrowing, right? And what I didn't like about the whole furlough scheme was companies were very conniving with the furlough scheme, right? I know directors and managers that used the furlough scheme to get rid of staff that they didn't want.
Yeah.
They used that scheme to get rid of staff they didn't want, right? And it was easier for them to do that because they were only paying 75% of their income, and then this week they got rid of a whole load of people, right? So the government is like, there are certain things that, one is the furlough scheme and one is the whole financing around PPE as well. So I've got a friend and he's a surgeon, and he couldn't believe that in Great Britain in the 21st century, his whole team couldn't get PPE, right? This is not some like war-torn country, right? This is Great Britain in the 21st century, right? And what I noticed they did was when they imported the PPE from Turkey, it was made such a low standard, and they were getting offers from seamstresses, from tailors, all sorts in this country to make it for them, right? Granted, it was a little bit more expensive, and they bypassed them. So what does that tell you? Who is running that, right? How is that working? And going back to what Blue was saying, going back to what Theo was saying about cash, right? Cash to this government. Granted, I'm not a conservative, right? And right now, I'm not even a Labour Party member, but cash to this government is so important. It is so important, and unfortunately, a lot of that cash goes to people they know or companies they're going to work for in the future, right? Or to people who put them on the pulpit, right? And they've got a cousin that does da, right? Yeah. If yourself or myself went to a bank and said, "Can I have 10 grand to build an extension?" and you went and bought a car, and you went and did this, and you went and did that, they'd be on your front doorstep in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
How come that you can give hundreds of thousands of pounds to companies that were only registered the same week of coronavirus, right? And yet you can't feed kids in, but yet you can't feed kids during half term.
Yeah.
Martin, it's ridiculous because I know people, and I'm not going to name names.
That's some fantastic points there, Martin. I have to say that. Sorry, Theo. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was going to say the people are taking advantage of these cash bailouts as well. There's people that have taken 50 grand loans, right? These bounce back loans and closed the company down, right? They got 50 grand. Yeah. The amount of people who have done that is ridiculous. Yeah. They're taking these 10 grand grants as well. Yeah. All this money. And it's not really been policed properly.
No.
Yeah? So they try to make themselves look good. Yeah. By I'm funding this and I'm doing that and eat out to help out and stuff like that. And then they're sitting there thinking, oh shit, we can't do that again. Right? What are we going to do now? Yeah. And now they look ridiculous. Yeah. There wasn't put enough thought in that whole thing. It was a mess.
It was so scattergun. It was just amazing to watch.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, because I mean, well, you saw them come out. I mean, you know, I like the eat out to help out. I dove right into that. Right.
See that, Phil?
I dove right into it, but I did draw the line at queuing to get into Nando's. I wasn't going to do that. All right. I don't even queue to get into clubs. All right. I just don't do it. Sorry, you must be full. You must be too busy. Okay. I can't be doing that. But so Blue, if you think about your conspiracy theories or our conspiracy theories and all the rest of it, and if you think about things like hypernormalization,
Yeah.
could you say that this is a period where we're being prepped for resets? You know, let's have a reset. Let's shut down and start doing it this way. Shut down, start doing it this way. Shut down, start doing it this way.
Hold on. Listen, I was prepared for this since I was 16, 17 years old. If you had older persons around you who are quite knowledgeable, and they were conspiracy theorists. We talk about David Icke and people like who told us about this years ago. The New World Order. That's all what's going on in clear view. Everything is manifesting itself. It's like it wasn't happening quick enough, so they had to find a way to nudge it on a bit. And that's what it seems like to me, because everything what the New World Order is about is in effect now, is coming to pass right now as we speak, on every level, in everything.
Well, do you know what, Blue? A year ago, 2 years ago, you probably would have had 3 people on their backs laughing. Yeah, but I don't think anybody is as prepared to dismiss that. Whether they agree with it or whether they don't agree with it, the reaction is different to that kind of speech. You know,
I hear you. Yeah. What it is that you can't. There's not even anything to laugh at. Like, you're talking about cashless society. They've been putting this in place for a long time. One world cashless society. It's clear for everybody to see. That's what's going on. So how do they get it? Look, all right. Sorry, not going to go too far. I'm not going to state, because it's not fact. It's not matter of fact. But my conspiracy.
Mate, I would love to have you on another podcast to go
Don't
in
worry,
deep.
you will.
Yeah,
you will. Right. the conspiracy in my mind tells me that this was created, whatever it is, whether it is actually a virus or whether it's just, in my opinion, scaremongering. And I'm not saying, Theo, for 1 second that your dad wasn't ill, and but I don't believe he was ill with what they say is coronavirus. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
And I mean, because before coronavirus, and they put these symptoms out there as what is coronavirus, we all had these symptoms at one point, and we didn't call it coronavirus, and we got past it and we were fine. And factually, not opinion, factually, we all know that there are more cases of flu and what's the other one? Somebody help me out. Oh my God, what's the other one? Pneumonia.
Pneumonia, right? Okay. Yeah.
People die from both of those things than they have of coronavirus. And everything. Listen, I had Bell's palsy. They wanted to put that down to coronavirus until one of the paramedics said, no, you know what? Just try something for me. And then when I tried, he said, no, I think you got Bell's palsy. His colleague before he came in, he had made his mind up. This was coronavirus.
Yeah. I hear a lot of people saying that you have to write this down as coronavirus, you know. So this is what we're talking about: March, April, May, probably up until June.
I've had a lot of people who've died, and they put coronavirus down on their death certificates. They've died of cancer, they've died of heart attacks, they've died of all other things, nothing to do with coronavirus. Yeah. So these numbers are being spiked by other deaths.
Yeah, and the BBC got pulled up on that point. So they got pulled up on that point by the TV watchdog about how they were reporting the deaths, because what they were saying was someone was dying and it was caused by coronavirus, but yet they had no proof.
Yeah.
So if you listen to what they say now, is they say now this person died within 28 days of
testing positive for COVID. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Rather than
this is. I was gonna say, because I had like 3 things, and they're kind of all related to what you guys have been saying, and I think the idea of something sinister happening or something sinister going, I think it's a given. I don't even consider that conspiracy theory. I think people can see, again, what we said earlier, people have capitalized and done all sorts and will continue to. And in terms of resetting, I think 100%, there are people that are seeing it as an opportunity to reset. Now, where people need to, like us, where we need to focus our energy, I would say, is how consistent are we being with that scrutiny and that argument? Because when Boris looks all scatty with his hair all over the place and says something confusing, the counter argument is, oh, it's scattiness, it's a mistake. And for me, you can't have both. You can't have scatty mistakes, because what you can have is the pretense to be scatty and make loads of mistakes. But it's almost like, and I'm not going to go down the football route now, but it's almost like how I attacked Wenger, where I would say, no, you get off lightly by people saying that you're arrogant and that you're trying to save money. You take criticism. So this government will take criticism, or the powers that be will take criticism for making silly decisions, not quite being on it, because that's an easy thing to take. You just come out looking a bit stupid. But what that doesn't do, it doesn't pull off the mask. There's something else going on. And I would say people are quite naive if they don't see the danger in continuously saying that, oh, they don't know what they're doing. First of all, it's not one man making a decision. I've never said Boris anyway. I don't think for a second he will make a call on his own. And B, the minds that go into this stuff, it's all deliberate. The color chart that came out, that looked like a Nando's chart, where and no one talks about that anymore, but the color code in terms of, amber, whatever, it looked all playful at first.
Yeah.
A lot of thought goes into these things.
Mm-hmm.
They're not mistakes.
Mild lime.
Yeah. Your mild lime.
Chili.
So
extra hot.
All I wanted was, and I would respect it more,
I've never thought of it
honesty,
like that.
all the things related to the economy that you guys mentioned at the start, I wanted honesty around it. So, Theo's right about London. Call it what it is. Say that we are this tier for these economic reasons. And I tell you what, a lot of people would probably sit up straight and maybe not agree, but you'd listen, because it would stop these kind of conversations. We had it in teaching. When people were talking about schools opening and all the rest of it, everyone was like scratching their head trying to work out how schools would be safe. And then you were saying that, but kids don't carry it. Don't say the reason why schools will be open is because kids don't carry it. So be honest and say you need kids to be at school so their parents can go to work for the economy. Exactly. That, I'll say, fine, you don't care about us as much as teachers, whatever, fine. But at least you're being honest and you just take it. So that was the whole sort of honesty economy thing. And Martin mentioned about the media and emotion, and I feel really passionate about this. Because I've had to have long conversations with parents and with students who I felt were being sort of puppeteered by watching the news. And this was a hard conversation for me on a personal level as well. But where we were talking about, 1 second we talk about COVID and people, again, I'm dealing with students who have lost people. One girl lost her dad, and that was quite shocking for us. We were like, damn, this is the first time we have to go through this. So, on one hand, we're talking with that. Then we had a half-term break, and in that half-term, we had the George Floyd situation. Monday morning, everyone's like, what are we doing about George Floyd? And for 2 weeks, no one was talking about COVID anymore. Now, rightfully so, there was things to look at. But what I didn't feel comfortable with was that, while I can say I know how to filter things and I know how to take the news, and I remember studying this in sociology. I loved it. Mr. Malowney, back in the day, he was my sociology teacher, and he never rated himself. But Marxist theories on the media was probably one of the most important things I ever learned. Forget grades and subject. For me, it taught me everything, really. But why are you showing me that news? What is it you want me to think? And why are you not talking about this stuff anymore? All of a sudden, you care about this one. You care about this death more than any other death. And I've got kids crying. I've got kids in this country crying about someone in America. Fine. Listen, I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I shouldn't say you shouldn't be upset. But why now? Is it the intensity of being in lockdown? Maybe got no other distractions. We're honest about that. But for the media to control your emotions and pick and choose when you care about something is wrong for me. And I told a lot of people, staff included, I was very harsh about it back in June and July. I said, I'll remind you of this situation. And you're saying, what should we be doing when I've given you opportunities as a teacher to deliver stuff about stop and search and the effect of it on young black people in this country in PSHE? But you said that, it's not your subject area and you got all tense. So now you want to talk about stuff like this.
Exactly.
I'm going to remind you in September, I said, I'm going to remind you in October. And what have I done? I've reminded those same people who all of a sudden aren't talking about George Floyd because the media aren't making them talk about it. They're barely talking about COVID. So the media and how it controls emotions is something that I think is really important for parents to highlight as well. Because while there are truths in what's being presented, George Floyd died.
Yeah.
But why do you care about it more now than any other time? And why are you not talking about it now in comparison to how you were talking about it in June? Like, for me, there's something wrong with that situation. And podcasts, and not just because we're on one now, but podcasts for me, I would say, and this has come to light a little bit just from listening to like Rogan's podcast and stuff like that, they're going to end up being the only truth. And actually, I think the government's going to be very worried. Because when I see Rogan, for example, who's got nothing to gain, you know, he do his thing, he'll get a scientist on, he'll get an author on, he'll get these people on, but who aren't given the platform on the news, you know.
Yeah.
It's
they might get 90 seconds.
Exactly. But now you're hearing 3 hours of long form conversation with Rogan, and they're talking their mind and they're saying stuff that you would never know. Vitamin D was an example of that. I talked to my wife about it because she was heard about vitamin D being like, you know, quite good for immunity. Maybe it's not specific to COVID or not, but viral infection.
Yeah.
Scientists were saying that back in April on his podcast. But why is that filtering through slowly? There's something that I think, and you feel controlling the podcast. There's a lot of power there, but depending on who you get on and how you put it out there, that's going to be more powerful. And that's something that I don't think the government saw. I don't think they saw where podcasts would potentially go.
So I suppose the podcasters look at your BBC, your ITV, your Sky News, your Channel 4 news, and a lot of them will call them the legacy news.
Yeah.
You know, that's what the news used to be.
Yeah.
Because people want to absorb so much more, you know, around it, especially as people aren't interacting. People aren't going to the pub and sitting down and going, hello, Jim, what do you reckon of this corona malarkey? Can't do it.
Yeah.
You know, so this is the new format. This is the new format for us to sit around, have a beer and nut it out, really, you know, and see that sort of, you know, the boson between the 0 and the 1, you know, that glue that holds those two numbers together, as being very important, you know, as being everything about it. Raf, that's a in the education environment, that's not a popular view. That's not a popular view for you to hold. So that's very brave for you to have the role that you have and to go against. I mean, if I look at education establishments, if you do not agree, you are cast aside. You are absolutely cast aside. I mean, I'm saying that in quite general terms. I'm sure there's a safe space for cast asides in the education establishments. You know, they'd have to put something in, but to have a view that actually really genuinely challenges the question, why are we in the UK so distraught about somebody who died in America? And like you said, you have to, even now, I have to put the caveat on. It's a terrible thing that should never have happened. You know, George Floyd did not deserve to die, of course. But what else are they trying to sort of, you know, crowbar into that situation to kind of make it into such chaos and such mayhem?
Definitely.
Around, which inevitably detracts from the issue, you know, because, Blue.
But don't forget, as you said, the news, as it used to be, the even the CNNs, the Channel 4, ITV, blah, blah, BBC, is not the only platform anymore. It's the same. So my background, music. Music is no longer, record companies no longer control and dictate who's popular and who's not.
Yeah.
Social media does. So, you know, when I was signed, the record company, you'd go to them with your demo or your music and you'd say, this is gonna do the thing. I know it is, because you were young. You know what your friends like and everybody in around you likes. But some guy who doesn't really know about it, who's getting paid how much K a year, is telling you, no, we can't do that. That's not going to work. And how did you, back then, there was no way for me to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
But now I can go to him with 68,000 likes and comments, what state that song is a banger. So therefore, we know if I put that out tomorrow, I've got at least 68,000 people who's going to buy this song.
Yeah, there's measurements.
So just to put that back into perspective, what I'm talking about, the news, what we put out, what the George Floyd thing, which was captured by a video camera, which we didn't have a lot of back in the day, they had to run with that story because it was already out there. So they had no control over that. It's like a virus. It gets out there. You can make one, put it out there, but as soon as you put it out there, it does its own thing. It evolves and it goes where it wants to go. So that's what that story did, and it was so powerful. And it's something it's not the first thing what's happened. Like somebody said something when I went up to the march up central London. Somebody had a banner what said something about something like basically to the effect of what happened to George Floyd isn't new. It's just that it's been captured by videos all over by video cameras and being put out there.
Yeah.
But if you look at the let's say if you look at the deaths in the US of black people, and you look at Eric Garner, you look at Breonna Taylor, you look at George Floyd, and that poor boy who went out simply running.
Yeah.
Two rednecks shot him because they thought he was the kid who was robbing in their neighborhood because he was running. They thought, right? If you look at those deaths, you've got to ask yourself, at what point were people gonna kind of still sit there and walk up to a police station in the US and chant for 20 minutes and walk away? At what point was that going to be kind of the only thing that they could do, right? At what point? And I think, unfortunately, the way I've not watched it in full, but the way George Floyd died was just grim. It was just it was just grim. And I think that if whoever watched that around the world, and it was shot in such a way that it wasn't like you couldn't hear it, you could hear it. And the worst thing of all was that people were walking past and they had the chance to maybe save him. I don't know if that officer who knelt on his neck, I don't know if he had knelt on his neck for 10 seconds, would George Floyd still be alive? You don't know. But what for me made that kind of even more powerful was the way that people around the world looked and said, "Do you know what? That is fucked.
Mm-hmm.
That is fucked."
Yeah.
And if you think about kind of the oppressions that are going around in the world right now, so if you look at Yemen, say, right, and you look at Egypt, you look at Palestine, right, this stuff has been going on for decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's been going on for decades, right? And the George Floyd story was so powerful because it was so emotional. It made everyone stop and look, and for those kind of 35 seconds or 37 seconds or whatever it was, that I think will be kind of one of the most powerful things that you ever see, but you don't want to see.
Yeah. 8 minutes. Yeah. 8 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I can only agree with that. But forget the but. Yeah, there is no but to it. I only say that because I don't have another adjoining word for the next thing that I'm going to say. However, if you take that incident,
Mm.
there is a huge amount of good that comes off that in regards to what happens next. Where I'm slightly uncomfortable is the bastardization of what happens next, and the way that what happens next moves into somebody else's agenda. And that's the bit where I feel that the BLM movement could potentially take its eye off the ball, because defunding the police is not a solution. Yeah, burning down black businesses is not a solution. So there must be a better solution and a better vent for that in a more dignified approach. So I always look at problems like this, you know. So you bring a problem, what's the solution? So I start thinking about the solutions before I really give too much thought to what the problem is. I like to simplify the problem and then think of a solution. Okay, so there is institutional racism within police force or any authorities across the land, across every single aspect of our lives, every touch point, you go to the council, they'll look at you differently to than they look at somebody else. Sorry, excuse me, that I just have to keep resetting that camera. In regards to the solution, is what I'm trying to get around is where should the focus actually be? Because it can't continually be rioting. It's got to be lobbying the institutions for real change, and not because a riot does nothing. A riot does nothing.
Well, I think the issue you have is that if you lobby, right? So if you go and you lobby, say Westminster, right? Do you know how much backing you have to kind of persist and push that piece of lobbying? It's huge, right?
Yeah.
If you look at, say, let's take the issues of North London, say Tottenham, right? Let's take Tottenham, right? Tottenham historically, that populace do not like the police. The police do not like them, right? I watched a show about policing Tottenham about 2 or 3 years ago, and the police commissioner for Tottenham was black, right? I can't remember his name, but he was a black guy, right? And this guy was between a rock and a hard place, right? Because he was trying to get certain incentives pushed through, and when he tried to get them pushed through, they would get blocked, right? Then you have in Tottenham, the MP for Tottenham is David Lammy, right? David Lammy is probably one of the most transparent MPs that you will probably come across, right? But the problem is that he's a Labour MP, and the other problem is David Lammy speaks his mind, right? He speaks his mind very openly in Parliament, right? So, for me, there is a, even before you even go to lobby, even before you decide to go and protest, there is an instant kind of perception that, right, nah, that ain't happening here, right? You can walk up and down the street with your placards, but you won't be coming in this building and saying what you want to say. Right? You don't get further than the front doormat, and that has been like that, especially in America and to an extent this country, since before us, right?
Yeah.
So how are, say, a young 16-year-old right now, right, who's doing their GCSEs and A levels, who wants to go into politics, what would be really interesting would be to get their view on what they think is possible right now, right? Because we're here and we've seen it, and to an extent we've done it, right? But what I'm saying is that there's that word, and the word is called perception. And as soon as you kind of, unfortunately, there's that other word or words, and it's called being kind of tarred with the same brush. As soon as you attempt to kind of promote change or be seen to promoting change, whether you're kind of black and you're trying to promote black change, or whether you're black and you work for a kind of, let's say, a majority white head of management, or whatever you want to call it, right? That guy's going to say to you, right, well, listen, what you want to do is you want to go and talk to your people and sort it out. Your people come and see you, right? And I'm using this as an example. I can't remember the police commander's name in Tottenham, but I'll get it, right? And he was between a rock and a hard. He can do anything for either community. He was like this: left, right, left, right, left, right, with no. He started and didn't finish a single thing. Because why? Perception. And there was no way he was getting past the front door, Matt.
Raf.
Sorry, yeah, like I think, you know, one of the problems with this whole thing is that and I don't want it to sound like a conspiracy, but it reminds me of the Matrix a little bit. It reminds me of, give them their little revolution, and this is part of the same old damn thing, and then we're going to do this another version of this. Like, people need to open up their eyes a little bit. I didn't care if it was the whole planet that actually sat up and actually protested about this. It was on the same level. It's not, in my eyes, it's not the win that we think it is. And I think the fact that you look at what's happening on this planet in a year's time and remember this conversation, because for the impact that should have should be huge. It should be ripples. And I'm seeing conversations about changes in the FA, and I'm seeing this, that, and the other, and that's all good. But you know what? It's what they want you to have. It's the change that they want you to make. A quick story about, like, when this first come on board, like after half term, Monday morning. So without boring you, the Monday in our staff briefing over Zoom, every day has its own different agenda, and it's my one. It's like a pastoral update. It's normally about anything related to family, students that we think staff need to know. But because it was after half term, I said to, like, we have an SLT briefing beforehand. I said, like, you know what, I'm not doing that. I don't know what people have been through over, you know, you're seeing faces in a box for a start. And I said, this isn't a normal situation. And I said, I don't know what they've been through over half term. Everyone's been struggling emotionally for the previous half term. I'm not going to do it. So we decided to do something slightly different. And we'd all been sharing, like, fun things, like, you know, play a song over Zoom, bit of a story behind it, your favourite film clip, that kind of thing. So we did that. And I could see a few faces just sitting there looking tense. Meanwhile, I get a message on my phone saying students are asking, what are we doing about George Floyd? And I didn't even understand the question. What do you mean what we're doing about George Floyd? Like, so anyway, carried on. I ignored it, carried on with the briefing. And then she keeps messaging saying that students have been talking about how we're using our Instagram, which I don't even look at. Cut a long story short, the briefing blew up a little bit. Staff were, like, really passionate about it, went on this big rant about, like, everything that had happened in America and that we should be doing more. Again, I had the question, what does that look like? What does more look like for us? What do you want to do right now? And then it was just talking about everything was a bit of a ramble to do with our curriculum, all stuff that's in place, by the way. No kind of knee-jerk reactions in my head, but it was almost like, we need to do this, we need to put posters up, we need to be, the library should have more books in Africa and all that kind of thing. I'm like, listen to what you're saying. Listen to what you're saying. Things that you could have said a long time ago, but now this has sparked it. Fine. But why I'm bringing this up is because when we started all looking at the hashtags, for example, so the school put a few hashtags out there, and you might as well have used the same template that Nike were using, that Adidas were using, that everyone is like, so is that what keeps people happy now? So our students were now happy because we put out a hashtag message, which, from honest with you, my school and my team, I think there's a lot of integrity, there's a lot of honesty. I think, like, we can operate in a way that I say I haven't operated in previous schools in the past. But that was probably the most annoying thing for me, actually, like I didn't like that we did what other places were doing, other organizations were doing, because I felt like, nah, like it doesn't mean anything to me. And I tried to get my head around like what this whole thing was. And you're right. Yeah, a lot of good came out of this situation. Well, I was trying to understand it. I came across like I was playing devil's advocate when I talked to people, but I wasn't. Like I wanted to understand what was different now. As someone who's been stopped how many other times by police, as someone who's seen this stuff before, I was like, why now? And I get it. And everything that you said, Blue, about the video going out, 100% has played a role. But I look at all that and I think, again, not just who's benefiting, but is this going to be all we do? Is this how you silence me? Is this going to be like a bigger version of Black History Month where we go around in cycles every year? I look at Mary Seacole and, the same characters. I look at Mary Seacole, I look at Olympia Christie winning a medal, I look at every year and we go around in circles. That's not us moving forward. That's not us moving forward. But you're giving me another version of that now. You're giving me another version of that where you know how to keep me happy. So yeah, like you say, Martin, we can be in the streets. We ain't getting further than them streets. You're not getting further than the streets. That's not change. That's got nothing to do with change. And you know what they need to look at? There's a version of police intervention that doesn't come close to murder. That's where I want to see people's eyes, because you don't just become that policeman that stood on his neck overnight. You get there and no one's talking about that. No one's looking at those kind of things there. You're looking at brutality. Brutality is an extreme. That stuff comes around again. It goes on in America all the time. You need to look at other stuff. And while everyone's eyes are on murders and brutality and protests, no one's looking at like 2 layers down. There's a culture that we're not talking about. There's no hashtags for that culture. Black Lives Matter isn't new. It's been out years, but all of a sudden we're all on it, and we've changed the tone of it too. That's what I don't like, and that's how they will silence us.
Yeah. Look, guys, some fantastic points. That has to be said, and they're all as valid as each other. And in hearing those, I can almost kind of build a bit of a synopsis in regards to what I was waffling about earlier. And it's kind of about, well, what is the focus of Black Lives Matter now? Can somebody give me 4 of their things that they want for Black people in the UK? Because I don't know. And if there is, that message is definitely not clear, because I keep my ear pretty close to the ground on looking for what do you want. Now, there should be a nice, clear thing, because you're right, Gilbert. The bottom line is we're going to get to a point, or, I feel like I'm a person of color, so I can come in and feel the same injustices because I get looked at in a certain way, and I know that and I feel that. But if there was only something where they would say, this is what it is, this is what it is, this is what it is, and this is what it is, and these 4 things or these 5 things are what we protest about, and you know what, we don't fucking stop protesting until we knock each one of them down. And we haven't got that, and that's what I'm sort of frustrated about, because it's like headless chickens. Okay, it's like everybody's just protesting because this one person died, and that's noble, but there is actually now more to that legacy that has to be met by everybody else who still stands.
Yeah, absolutely. But like you said, I mean, I watched the interview with the leaders of Black Lives Matter for the UK this afternoon on Channel 4 News. And I don't want to sound I don't want to sound negative, but I was surprised with when one of the questions put to them was, you've managed to raise £1 million in the UK from donations. What are you going to do with that money? They didn't know. Right? Now, there's another organisation called Kick It Out. Right?
Yeah, football.
Right. I've got a friend who works there, and Kick It Out was a long established organisation in football, which is run by Andros Townsend's dad. I can't remember his name now, but he's the chair for Kick It Out. And when I'm going to use this as an example, when Rio Ferdinand failed his urine test, and it was a Kick It Out day, and he was asked to wear a Kick It Out shirt on the pitch prior to playing the game. Rio refused, and he said, "This Kick It Out lark, it's just a bunch of muppets thinking they're doing something, thinking they're reaching the nether regions of football, when they're not even scratching the surface, right?" So
Rio Ferdinand said that.
Yeah. So if you read Rio's book, it's in his book. So Black Lives Matter. I mean, what like you say, what are they trying to achieve? What is the goal, right? I mean, you've got to have goals. Goals have got to be achievable, and if you can't achieve them first time around, then you kind of work your way back and you try and achieve them the second time around. But I couldn't understand why they did that interview, because they had. I mean, it was almost like they had nothing new to bring to the table. And I watched it and I thought, do you know what? You guys have done really well, but you're still feeding off the summer.
But Martin, that's like my point. But I think if it didn't have such a big fanfare to it, I don't think they would have been. I think they've been distracted. They've been distracted. And I'm not surprised they don't know, because every Tom, Dick, and Harry is hashtagging them. You can even get an emoji off of it now. It's got to the point where that, for me, it's almost masterful. Like, if it didn't affect me as a wow, that's the powers that be at play there, man. That's how you control people. You take what they thought they owned, you confuse them, spin them around in a couple of circles, give it loads of attention, everywhere. Now you think you've won. Now you don't even know what you want anymore.
Yeah.
If you were to ask me what I want, it's nothing for me as a person. Like, I think what you said, Philip, what does the average black person, I would say, in the UK want off of the back of all this? All I would want is just for other people to be aware of your own privileges. And I mean everyone. I'm not just talking about white privilege. I'm not even going to use that phrase. Everyone to be aware of their own privileges. Just levels of emotional intelligence. Because if you have that, it goes a long way. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking for any handouts, which I think actually is what a lot of people would like to say that the average black person wants. Talking about this, that, and the other with jobs. I would argue if people are aware of their own biases and their own privileges, what it does is it eliminates the other problems that do get in the way of black people having certain roles in certain organizations. It eliminates the chances of that, because you've got a foundation level of awareness that has to come first. To talk about people wanting this, that, urban positions and that other, those kind of cheap handouts, they don't change the way anyone thinks. It just gives you something. There's a lot of people that don't realise that Black Lives Matter isn't meant to be about that. They think it is.
No, I think people like Raf said. I mean, people have this kind of perception that. I mean, I think back to my granddad, right? So when I was a kid in Southall, 17 Windsor Road, just round the corner from Raf, on Havelock Road, and I think back to what my granddad told me when he came here, when he came to the UK in the 1940s, and when he came in the 40s, there was this message on doors which said, "No blacks, no dogs, and no Irish," right? And I remember I used to look at my granddad and think, what the hell are you going on about, right? It's madness. There's no way, like there's no way, right? A person would blatantly treat you like that. There's no way. right? Because you're
I
a child.
remember being young and seeing the same signs.
Yeah, I mean,
9 years old.
right. See, now you're a kid, and you're kind of, you don't know how to interpret that, do you? Right.
No.
Right. Because you have, because you have no, because you have no understanding of it. But I think back to kind of what my granddad used to tell me, and when he first came here, about having an opportunity to do something for himself, right? I mean, I'd say hand on heart right now, 99.9% of people do not want a handout.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you're black, white, Indian, Chinese, or whatever. All you want is you want to be given the same opportunity as the man who's sitting next to you on the train, or you want to be given the same opportunity as the man who's sitting in first class. You want the opportunity to move from standard class to first class, but do it off your own back, right? Granted, there will be some people who will take advantage of that situation. There always is, right? But I think in the wider world, especially more so in the UK, because the UK has more of a relationship with ethnic people, let's say, right? With India and with Africa and the Caribbean, etc., etc. There is more of an established relationship there. It goes back 500-600 years, right? So how has it been over that period of time that we're still saying that all I want is the same opportunity, right? I mean, me personally, I'm not saying that, right? But I know there are tons of 16-year-olds, 18, 19-year-olds, right, who are saying that. There are loads of grown men who are saying that, right? Like there was a news clip on on Channel 4 News this evening. There were two brothers, right? There were two brothers in East London who were just having a conversation on the road.
Fist bump, right?
Yeah. They simply fist bumped each other, right? Two coppers come up to them, put handcuffs on them. The argument was that they were suspected of drug dealing. Now, I don't understand in what universe that you can see that you know that these two guys are drug dealing. Like how, how, right? Now, if it was what one of them said was if it was two white guys standing outside of a fast food shop, fist bumping, the police would go driven straight by, right? And we know that, right? So it's the what is it like? What is the problem that they see? What does it come down to? And the only thing that separates that is that they're black, or they're Indian, or they're or whatever it is, right? That's the only separation. That is the only separation. Now that too, for me, comes back to being treated as a human being, right? My grandmother used to tell me, always be humble, right? Always listen, right? Always be kind, right? And always offer, right? It's just simple human traits, just simple human traits.
Yeah.
And for some reason, like I said, there's that word perception. There's a perception that whether you're young, black, even if you're young, black, and successful, right? There is still a perception that how did he earn that then, right? Because there's a perception there already.
Yeah.
Right? Look at the work that Marcus Rashford's doing, right? I'm so happy that it's being blasted all over the TV. That's the type of thing that, for me, Black Lives Matter could be doing stuff like that.
Well, it's
right.
It's a very simple message, right? It's as simple as we buy any car, isn't it? You know, it's feed the children that are on free schools, you know, during this time. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And perception. Well, perception. I mean, you know, you can hold it up, and sometimes you can hide behind it.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, so you know it has two sides to it. So you could argue that the perception of the police were that the two black guys were drug dealing, yeah, and you can argue that the perception of the two black guys were that they were being harassed by the police. Okay, so Blue, nice one, mate. You held out for a while there. Hour 35.
Yeah, no, I would have stayed the full hog. Don't worry, I'll be back again.
No worries, man.
Yeah,
Guys, it was great. It was a pleasure. We'll catch up soon, guys.
All right, bro. Take care. Yeah?
Take it easy, brother.
Take care.
Yeah. So yeah, that perception can be a dangerous thing, which is why you have to kind of nut it down to facts.
Yeah.
You know? You've got to nut it down to facts. Now, I'll lay my cards on the table in regards to where I think the problem is. It's too difficult to fire people. It's too difficult to sack the wrong uns. You know, if you lodge a complaint with the Police Complaints Commission, you get banded around for years and years and years, and then you get tired and you go away.
Yeah.
Right. So there's one problem. Is auditing the IPOC. You know, I think that should be done for black people straight away, to look at the complaints and look at how the complaints have been resolved. And I think there should be an inquest in that. And I think there'll be a lot of value in there. I think you should look at how black people are treated in the family courts. I think the amount of fatherless homes within the black community is a massive problem and an encouraged problem. There's not a black man alive who could stand in the family courts and say, I didn't do the things that are being said about me, and be believed and be trusted and have a really rational investigation into that. It just doesn't happen, because do you know why? If you look at the way the system is run, they're comfortable with it. Nobody likes change. Nobody wants to change what they've been doing, because this is how we do it, and we've seen it like this before, and we had another case where it was like this, so we can't deal with this case like that, and so on and so forth.
Comfort is a dangerous thing, and I think
absolutely.
Why, you know, when this whole thing started, because again, like if I just go back to my own school, one of those things I was saying to everyone was like if this is what we're doing, because there's been a lot of wrestling, there's been a lot of emotion, there's things that I didn't agree with, there were teachers who I felt probably should have been less emotional, considering you're dealing with young people. You know, we're all doing it. There's a lot to consider here. Don't project your own stuff onto other kids, that kind of thing. I was like, if we're doing this properly, we're going to go the whole way. And like I said earlier, I'm going to be that person to remind you of this situation come next year, because it has to be worth it. We have to go through this pain. And the phrase, like, we have to be comfortable to be uncomfortable, people kind of took that as like, oh, we're going to talk about some things, talk about race. Yeah, that's a part of it. But actually, it means, no, we're going to get uncomfortable because we've all lapsed in our ways and we're all guilty of it. We've all seen how, you know, we don't want to ask that question because you don't want to rattle X, Y, Z. But the spotlight hasn't been on the right stuff. So all the things that you just spoke about with the courts, that's what I'm saying about wins in terms of Black Lives Matter. It'd be easy. I'd do it. Like if I had the platform of Black Lives Matter, I would not be talking about the things that you want me to talk about.
I want a judicial review on the IPOC tomorrow, start tomorrow. And if it takes 3 years, it takes 3 years. But I want every single complaint that's gone through to be looked at and to be verified.
a win for me isn't a hashtag by the Premier League. That again, it looks great at first. It looks like you've got great public, but that isn't asking the right questions.
No, genuine action.
You know, talking about the stuff that you said, Martin, earlier, like, you know, the signs, for example, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, that kind of thing. You know, if you were to go back, if someone would have the opportunity to go into that same house that had that sign, would you pick the sign coming down and the person having to let you in, or would you pick the person thinking about why they put the sign up there in the first place and unpicking their own thinking, which is a bit more long term? Yeah. And these are the things that I would say there's a version of that you want from Black Lives Matter. You want it to, it's not just about raising awareness, it's getting people to think police and that stop. I mean, I've got some crazy police stops that are very similar to that, where it's like, there is no way you thought I was guilty, you're lying. But anyway, I'll go with the flow. Like, I don't want them to not do that just so my life's easier. I want them to ask themselves why they thought that. Where did it come from? Ask yourself these questions. That's where and we're all human beings, we're all intelligent humans on this planet. Yeah. It's not hard to do, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, sorry, Martin.
Yeah.
Drug deals do go down outside shops.
Yeah.
You know, that does happen. You know, that's a common place, you know, like a little sort of meeting here and all the rest of it, you know. So that perception is understood. But why do the police feel so confident that they can do that? Which I have a degree of sympathy around it. I can understand it. But then there's a sort of this is our God-given right to come and put these handcuffs on you and put you in this kind of stress. And that's our God-given right, because we don't have to approach this in any other way.
Exactly. Because they know that they can get away with it and nobody will ask any questions. What's obviously become more, let's say, more prevalent is the filming of these kind of harassment situations, the filming of
it's beautiful,
the police actions, right? Like, you see more of it now. I mean, think about when we were at school, right? And think about how much of it you've seen.
Well,
right?
I would have had a video of me at PE being lifted up by my sideburns. You know what I mean? I still think about that today from the teacher, because I was gobbing off or whatever, but I didn't feel like I was that bad. And then all of a sudden I'm being lifted up. I won't mention the teacher's name because I'm writing a court document for it now. But I remember his colleague, who was there as well, intervening. You know, and going, no, calm down, you know, take a walk.
Yeah. But
sorry, Martin.
The problem why I think one of the problems why officers won't intervene, and one of the issues that you see where you see officers will surround, like, you know, you get like 10, 12 officers surround like one person, is because they know that if one of them does it, the rest will follow, right? They will all follow, and they're like this little band of brothers. And if something just happens to go wrong, then we're all in it together. There's I can't remember the legal term for that. If you do a crime amongst friends, it's called enterprise. It's called joint enterprise. Yeah, it's called joint enterprise, right?
Right.
So if yourself, myself, and Raf walk down the street and you smash a car window, and you get arrested, we can get done on something called joint enterprise, right? How come that if a police officer commits a crime,
I was going to smash it, he stole it, he was going to sell it.
Yeah, right, exactly. But how come if a police officer, look at the George Floyd thing, they tried to get them all on joint enterprise because they stood around and watched, right?
It's even worse, isn't it?
Exactly. It's even more morbid.
Because you're there on duty.
You're there.
You could argue with passers-by or friendship groups that they were going to like scarper, like, no, you were there to back it, actually.
There you go, right? So how come more police officers in this country? I mean, I'm not saying they all commit what we would say is an offence against members of the public. I'm not saying that whatsoever, right? But there's a band of brothers in the police forces in this country who, they will stick together. They will do what they need to get through a given situation, and because they know that there'll be no comebacks.
Yeah,
they're very confident about that, and that's the systemic stuff.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, there is definitely an arrogance around the fact that nothing is going to ever come of your issue. It's never going to come of it, which is, there's some key words, isn't it? I thought my life was in danger.
Yeah.
And they'll run around. I mean, the thing is with those George Floyd officers, I mean, I don't even know their names or what have you, but looking at the footage, and like yourself, Martin, I didn't watch it, all. I just, you hear a few cries for, and you just think, okay, that's all right for me. I don't need to see anything more. But they just look like rabbits in the headlight. They look so out of their league, and lots of people have been talking about, what sort of training are these police being given? Now, I know that that's an American issue, shouldn't really care about it, but you just think to yourself as well, what sort of people are getting badges and tasers? What type of people are getting these things? How trained are they? And do you know what? Lots of these people who seem to be getting into these issues have got vendettas, have got deep-seated emotional trauma or the like, where they're just going to be a nasty fucker to someone who looks like the bully that they had in school, and it just stinks of that. There's no sort of comfort. There's no kind of like, I'm cool with being a police officer. I'm going to be straight down the line. You can see when you deal with some police officers, that little snarl of like that sniff that they get when they're like, yeah, got this. Do you know what I mean? Go on, keep talking, sunshine. Do you know what I mean? And you can see that almost like that sort of red mist going over them. This isn't, do you know what I mean? I'm not going to see this in any other way than the conclusion that I want to come at, and you have to do what you have to do. I mean, I just think that it's really got to be looked at, and there's too much complacency,
It's not just a training thing for me. I think it's also well, you kind of said it just now. It's a recruitment thing. But all these industries, education's the same. I say the same about teachers. I'm quite hard on teachers, really hard on teachers, because I think, over the years I've matured myself actually. Like, a lot of responsibility comes with this, and when you care about the place you work and the values that you're meant to have, you got to that recruitment's really important. You can have, I don't care how many degrees you got, what have you, like, we need to think about the type of person you've got working for your institution and what are they buying into. And that has to be, you slow down that process. But when you've got shortages in subjects, or if the police have got shortages, it's easier. It's going to be easier to get in. And in America, and again, listening to Rogan and some of the people that he's had on, they've got lots of people with lots of psychological damage. And actually, they're in a situation where it can only get worse because they're finding themselves in things that don't make the news. It's a big deal to have to pull out your gun and think, God, I might have to pull this trigger. It doesn't happen. We don't hear about it. But how many of those situations do you have to go through before you actually become a little bit more trigger happy or a little bit more tense? Yeah. So, it's not an easy job, and I pity them, but it's who gets in there in the first place. And then going on to the training. The training's on lots of levels. It's how to pacify. If I think of a teacher equivalent of that, it's, even up to the other day, I'm doing positive behavior management with non-teachers, and I've done it with like newly qualified teachers in the past as well. And some of the things I'm saying, they're techniques, but it's emotional intelligence. It's like, you kind of shouldn't have to say some of this stuff. You should have to shape it and hone your skills. So the police must have their version of that too. And if they had emotional intelligence, and don't get me wrong, not all of them are clearly bad. So we're only ever going to hear about the bad things that happen, but they need to look at that a little bit more. And did you guys see the black guy in South London who his famous story, and it was during lockdown after George Floyd, was he was stopped, and while he's being arrested, I think you can see it on camera, he's saying, I'm going to come back and train you guys one day. I'm going to come back and train you guys.
I heard that,
Yeah. He did a million interviews, like, you know, he's all over TV talking about it, and he was held up on high. Listen, I'm quite a cynical person naturally when I see that kind of thing. I'm like, because I'm thinking, why have you got this platform? There's something behind this. And then I see the videos of him running the training courses, and he's telling them about the story, and they're all sitting there with their clipboards, socially distanced apart, nodding their heads, listening to him talk about, you know, this is the problem with you guys. You make assumptions about da-da-da-da-da, and they're like that. They have to listen. They have to listen. Deep down in their minds, they're probably thinking, you know what? I ain't listening to you.
Yeah.
What happened? No change. I'm not saying that he was going to change London, by the way, but like, you know, he was something that they had to respond to.
Let's show them that we're doing something.
Yeah. And I hope he knew that too. I hope he wasn't naive enough to believe that he was having an impact on those individuals. Because out of that whole team, don't get me wrong, maybe 2 or 3 people actually sit there and go, yeah, like, you know.
Yeah, but watch those 2 or 3 people try and raise their heads above the parapet within the institution going, hang on, Greg's just, you know, profiled somebody, and they go, fucking shut up.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Pipe down, or that's your career over. Now, listen, the police as an institution is in the world of shit. It's in the world of shit. It's at an all-time low, okay? But I genuinely believe that it is necessary, and it's an institution that we should be in admiration of. Somebody who wants to put themselves in a service role like that. And it's down to the police institution to make sure that just not every Tom, Dick and Harry gets to do that, and they really take some more pride in what they're offering the public, because it's public service, you know, not just an opportunity for you to kind of run around with a badge and a taser, you know, thinking that you're Butch Cassidy or whatever, or you know, I don't know, just going around carte blanche, doing whatever you want to do, knowing that you've got this band of brothers that's going to really tighten up whenever, you know, if the shit hits the fan. The bottom line is that people need the police. You know, we need the police. If someone rocks through your house now, I'm not coming. Am I? Do you know what I mean? You need the police. You need the police there.
And this, you know,
would come round.
People understand that to a point, but I think that the relationship between not just black people and the Met, or black people and the police in general in this country, but I think that in general society, I think people still respect the police to a point. But I also think that there's a huge kind of disrespect for them in the way that they portray themselves, and there's a huge disrespect for them in the way that they abuse their power, and that's something that will fester, I believe, for a long time yet. But long after we've gone, that will still be there, and it will still be there because they'll, you know, the whole thing of kind of society and that kind of bridge between general society and law and order and authority will get wider and wider and wider and wider. The more with the more problems that we have. So with more COVID, so with more pandemics, with more food shortages, with more job losses, that bridge gets wider and wider and wider all of the time.
Yeah.
Because people get desperate.
Yeah, you're right. You're so true. I was saying even earlier, like, you know, you're forcing people to grasp on their neighbours about stuff like that. Like, we're breeding a really disgusting society, and at least, you know, and unfairly, I see if for example, I saw police walking down the road slowly, like looking right, over fence or something, I'll just make the assumption that you're not looking for an intruder. You're looking to count COVID numbers. That's what you're doing, or counting the number of people in gardens and stuff like that. And that's now a new thing in my mind about the police, which wasn't there before. I find it a really horrible situation for us.
Yeah, but you'll know if you follow the funding, right?
Yeah.
There's more funding in finding people who are abusing COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's things like that.
So it's like, how nasty is it to think, you know, I mean, there's a template. There's a template with these sort of bureaucratic civil service backed organizations. Yeah. So they want to see, comes down from the top, what's going on with your COVID numbers over there in the Thames Valley, over in the Met, over in Essex, you know? So we need more resources, sir. Okay, right. How many more officers do you need? Or how many more people do you need to go grassing up people? Do you know what I mean? Right, here's a load of money. Put it into that pot, you know? And then that pot grows. And guess what? Do you know what? You need to be hitting those numbers. You need to be finding these people in order to justify this. You need to be hyperinflating, you know, these situations and these scenarios. And that goes on from everything from bin collection, refuge, all the way through to social services, housing, you know, you name it. It goes rife through every single department, a template on how to get more money for your department. That's what people are interested in. And it might not be what the police officers in, and it might not be what the social services workers interested in, but you can be damn sure it's the department head's interest who's going to push that pressure down.
And there's no effort to like do the simple stuff, like, again, going back to the training and developing emotional intelligence, and or even community. Like if you have a sense of community in your area, which London is always going to struggle with, to be honest, especially in this day and age, but also with your police, if there was, I'm not saying it's on the police to breed a sense of community, but if there was an effort there, proactive effort, you know, working with your local schools, that's where it starts. It starts with your schools. You've got kids in schools, primary, whatever, they know their local officers, You know, it changed everything. I've done it in my place with PCSO, actually, you know, and that's I don't even live in this. Not difficult, and that's with 16.
I brought 2 policemen to my son's parents' evening.
Yeah.
And I got a call from him. Apparently the head teacher phoned in and complained.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, she complained. I was like, isn't that good?
Yeah.
Isn't it good that happened?
Isn't it weird that would be a problem?
Yeah.
That's the society we live in, and that's not on police, by the way.
My son had the biggest smile on his face. He felt golden. That he had 2 6'2+ police officers giving him a smile. Do you know what I mean? And him having that kind of access, and the school having that kind of access to seeing such a positive interaction.
Yeah.
She saw an ulterior motive. She saw something different.
Yeah. And that just goes to show how much distrust there is, and it's like you break that cycle.
Yeah. It's a very tough thing to kind of a very tough cycle, like Ralph said. It's a very tough cycle to kind of maintain and not break, because people have so many different kind of ideas around it, and hidden agendas as well.
Yeah, and it's tough to break that. And I think the only way that you can break that, the only real way you can break that is you just have to circle the room. You know, you can't have corners to hide in. You have to make that. You've got to make that room a complete circle. You know, and take everything away from the edges, so that, you know what, if somebody says, "This is what's happened to me," and it might be something stupid, we're going to get something stupid. But unless you deal with those things that are, you know, in a reasonable way, in a reasonable manner, I'm not saying sack everybody who gets a complaint against them, but have a tally. If people are consistently getting complaints against them, you know, you can't be moving that on. You know, you can't be giving them a nice little golden handshake and letting them change departments.
And definitely look into it as well. Like, you know, I don't see it in the same way as teaching, but I know that regardless of anyone's views, regardless of a school, whether you're a church school or whatever, if there's a complaint about you as a teacher from a parent about something, and even smells of bias, even comes close to that, there's a lot of reflection to go on there. There's a lot of talk about it. Like, it can happen twice. It happened twice. That's a massive problem.
Yeah.
So this needs to be like, let's just slow it down and really think about what was behind that stop, because it doesn't look good. That's all you need from your manager. But someone needs to care about it, and just you know, and then the answers are probably with the person. That, you know, you don't need training. Maybe you just need to actually ask yourself some hard questions. Like, what was I thinking? Why did I do that?
Is this right for me?
Yeah, 100%.
Responsibility and accountability. Those are the real two words that I try and apply to everything from internally and externally. Because once you've weighed up and measured both of those two terms, you can normally come to a reasonable decision. Yeah,
definitely. And one of the things that I would say, it kind of goes back to, like, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff. Like, one of the problems that we do have in this country is that we don't have a high enough number of people that either care or understand the problem. We just think we do, or people just think they do. So, you know, back to the sign on the door thing, or stop and search, or whatever it might be, or jobs and opportunity. Like, people they're seeing and hearing, but they're not thinking the same thing as me or you. Like, they're hearing a different message. So the majority of people in this country will think, oh, you know, you can't say this anymore, you can't do this anymore, and that's not the answer.
That's fixed something.
Yeah, no one's saying you can't. People are asking you to think about what's behind your actions. So because everyone is thinking down that line, like, I know, even, you know, thinking about football, you know, and just a quick one. So, and I told you, Philip, already, my Chelsea supporters group, we're doing a group podcast with Paul Canaville, Frank Sinclair, because we want to really focus on player and fan experience when it comes to not football racism, as in, like, you know, people doing chants and that kind of thing. We want to understand each other in the sense of, like, have you ever thought about what it's like for black fans, for example, at Chelsea? Have you ever thought about what the match, and have a real good conversation around that? And one of the things that we've been talking about, building into this big group chat, will be, you know, that would the fans now, if fans were in grounds now, would everyone still be sitting there clapping, or, you know, they're taking a knee? There'd probably be a lot of scrutiny and a lot of criticism. Let's get on with the game. You've had your moment. You had your time. That doesn't make you a racist to say that. It just makes you someone that doesn't understand. It makes you someone that is looking at these gestures and doesn't really get it. And you're thinking that, oh, they're offended. Oh, they're offended. Oh, and it's not about being offended. You're just asking people to slow things down and just have a think. Just have, you know, but that's not the message coming through. So as a result, whether we're talking about police and stop and search, whether we're talking about, I don't know, job opportunities, what have you, I think it's deliberate. It reminds me a little bit of when a few schools up north back in the day, they were associated with not being allowed to celebrate Christmas. And I remember a conversation on TalkSport. I always bring it up because I used to call it all the time. And there was a conversation about a school in Blackburn, and everyone was like calling in saying, it's ridiculous, it's Christmas, and there was like something to do with a local mosque in Blackburn that weren't having it, apparently, and it was in the newspapers. And God knows how this happened, because, again, with my conspiracy brain on, I'm thinking, I know how it works in TalkSport. Like, you call, they screen it, they want to know what your point is, and then they let you through. It's like, you don't just get on and make a call. But this guy got through, who lived in the area. Matter of fact, his daughter went to the school, and he said, I don't know where that's come from. I don't know anyone in my mosque that's ever said that. And it kind of shut down the conversation. So I was thinking, like, the timing of that's interesting, because you're allowed to get that through, and not, I mean, to cut a TalkSport conversation early is quite a big deal anyway. Yeah, so you either lied about what you were going to say, but even then there's a time delay. So maybe they wanted you to tell the truth.
So are you saying that wasn't the case, or that was the case and then they shut it down?
It wasn't the case. It was like something that blew up. It was like a belief. It was a thing that was being said.
Okay.
And everyone was angry.
So people wanted to think that.
Yeah.
And that was just like a perfect little nugget.
Definitely. And people that think they're fighting your argument for you, sometimes people put a lot of things out there and it actually hurts. So there would have been someone out there saying, no, it's not right. There were people that called and said it isn't right. It isn't right to celebrate Christmas. It is offensive. And they said it thinking that they were helping. You're actually breeding hate. And sometimes I think when you're doing that, you're deliberately doing it. The best way to make people hate and turn against each other is to maybe, come with this sort of compassionate sort of approach to back people. So when I've seen people talking about Black Lives Matter and I listen to what they're saying, I slow down their message. I think, whoa, you're not saying the same thing as me. What you're actually doing is breeding hate. You're trying to make out like, we're, again, looking for handouts, or where we don't want the police to ever stop us. Don't touch me. We don't want that anymore because of George Floyd. No one's saying you can stop me all day long if you think I've done something wrong, like everyone else on the planet. But they don't ever deliver that message in the right way. And I think sometimes, if I'm a Black Lives Matter as an example, I really want to who's talking for me and who's hurting me. It's one of these things I've always got my ears open up about.
The Americans have, I don't know this for sure, but who knows how wide reading this podcast might be, but there might be people who can confirm or deny this. But I think the Americans have in their legal system standing, a term called standing. So that stops you from raising a concern to the authorities on behalf of somebody else. So if you said, I saw this person being assaulted, let's say, you couldn't do that. That person would have to say that they were assaulted. So you don't have standing on behalf of somebody else to bring forward a crime or bring forward a complaint on behalf of somebody else. So they say, what is, did this happen to you? And you say, no, it didn't happen to me. Probably, unless it's like a parent to a minor or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Somebody standing for somebody in a particular situation. But you couldn't just be a member of the public and go, officer, I'm so upset that man was called a name, a racist term or something like that. Do you know what I mean? You couldn't be upset for them. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, you tell me if you think it is, but it's kind of like somebody just bringing this thing and go, oh, I'm so offended. I'm so offended by what's happening. And this is what I think about it. And this is what I think should be done. And then that being taken as a community, a collective understanding of what the actual point is, what the issue is. So therefore, these people who are coming forward and saying, Black Lives Matters just means so much to me, and this is why, and this is why it's so important, etc. But having a bit of a more of a kind of like, I just want to be seen as the person who really cares so much about issues like this, and they'll find themselves caring about so many other issues as well, but they're not actually, like you said, they're not actually helping the matter. They're not actually bringing the conversation forward. They're stifling it underneath.
On that. So, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I would have completely forgotten. That was another reason why I was a little bit like, back in sort of like May, June, when this whole thing started, I was a little bit, not even skeptical, just almost a little bit angry, because I was thinking, when the idea of what is our school going to do about it, what are we doing about it, whether it be coming from a kid or even staff, I remember thinking to myself, like, I don't want necessarily your backing for this agenda, because A, I know you're not going to care about it in a few months' time, which I already said, that's fine. But B, you're doing it out of guilt. You've got guilt. You're carrying guilt, and you're jumping on this without even realizing that's what you're doing. And you can't be, between you and the media, you can't be controlling the emotions of young people in this building, or myself, or anyone else. And that's when I think that's dangerous. Like, let your motivation be, you've got insight into this problem and you think it's time for change, not because you feel like your ancestors may have had slaves, or that actually, or you've never been stopped, but some of your best friends have, whatever it might be. It can't be your motivation. And if it is a motivation, fine, but be honest with yourself.
Raf, So what you're alluding to there is white guilt.
Well, it's played a role in a lot of this stuff, and I don't. There's nothing wrong with that if it's there, but you just have to be honest with yourself and say,
No. I think it's important. 80% of my friends are white.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to feel?
Mm.
What does society tell me about how I'm supposed to feel around, my white friends? I mean, I know how I feel. Yeah. I mean, I feel no different. But what a society we live in where you have to be. Isn't that racist?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Isn't that racist?
Yeah.
That's racist, right?
Yeah.
Do we all agree that's racist?
Yeah.
To say, like, you white man, like, it's really dangerous when somebody wants you to feel exactly what they're feeling.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's
Like I fell off my bike. Do you know what that feels like? Push someone off their bike. There you go. That's how it feels. Hang on. Give me a chance to feel the compassion. Give me a chance to, like, be able to tell you that I'm with you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm with you, but we're not the same.
No.
Right? I empathize with what's going on. So where can I help? And I don't think the answer to that is I want you to feel the fucking pain.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I want you to feel every single inch of that pain that I've felt, because I don't think that's a legitimate thing.
No.
But
or bullying people into caring about what you care about doesn't work. It's not genuine. I don't want the support of anyone that I've had to force into it, which was kind of what I was trying to put out there to students as well. Where they, I was really worried. I was worried that people were going to turn on people. I hate these kind of divides. I feel like I saw it of us growing up at school. I saw times when the whole NF thing was kicking off, and that caused a division for a good couple of years, and then people sort of matured and saw sense. But that was something I will never forget, And I just think I hate seeing anything that even comes close to it. And I was worried about it. We have a very inclusive schools and mixed school. I mean, times have moved on anyway. We're talking about Camden schools, Islington schools. They don't even see that stuff. But this, and that's why I was very upset about it. It was like, I get that it's a problem in this country too, but don't bring that thing from over here and divide my school. That's how I felt. I was like, don't divide my kids over your nonsense. And you as a staff member, use your head too. And don't let your guilt even put this under the spotlight more than it needs to be. But if you feel guilty, you feel guilty. Just be aware of it. But don't point fingers at other people when you feel guilty. That's like the worst thing ever for me. It's like, you can't be doing that. Just say I feel guilty and I don't know why. Fine.
Yeah, minutes really bad. And I also think that if you kind of act in that kind of way, it's almost what word shall I use? I find that kind of extremely disrespectful to the situation at hand.
Yeah, it is.
And it's not, because there is a type of compassion there, but at the same time, it's like completely kind of it's disrespectful. So yeah.
Well, we've covered white guilt. Yeah, I mean, look, that's definitely a whole nother subject, or doesn't really have to be, but it's a bizarre sort of turn of, which is why I really struggle with not having those clear points to look at. Do you know what I mean? And because we don't have these really clear points to look at, we make up stupid things to be angry about or to justify. Do you know what I mean? And that whole thing is, if you don't, I don't even know where it came from really, but just to kind of like, you get people shouting, you're a white male, or you're a middle-aged man, or, just bizarre things at people just because they feel that is a position of power. Maybe some truth to that, but it's a hard thing to kind of like, unpick. How do you fight against that if you're a man who's happens to be white? Both my children present as white, but there's that's just that is literally, for my children, that is literally their skin color. Everything beneath them is so multicultural. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And my heart would sink if they were ever thought of as just being a color.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And therein lies the irony
Mm.
to the situation. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what you want, right? You don't want to be thought of as just a color. You want to be Rafael and Martin, and I just want to be Phil.
Mm. Yeah.
But we got these people who are telling us constantly, "You're black, you're white,
Exactly.
and that's it."
Yeah.
It's like Brave. It's like Brave New World all over again.
Brave New World.
Yeah.
Is that a book or?
It's a book.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, a good way to finish this is a bit more lightheartedness, and I do this in my other podcasts. I did it with my first podcast and my second podcast. This is my third podcast, so people will hopefully be looking forward to this last little bit, and we can close it all off.
All right.
Unless there's anything else you guys would like to add.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So I think the second one that I did was a little bit better than the first one, only because I gave it a bit more thought. But that's nothing to say that the first podcast isn't very, very good, and we should all download it and subscribe it, etc., etc., etc. So what I would like you to do, and because there's two of you, I'm going to condense it slightly. Okay. So you're sitting at the head of a table. Okay. And I would like you to have two, let's call it three dinner guests each. Okay. You have to tell me what the meal is that you're having. You can have individual meals, or you can have a set meal for everybody. And then your drink. And then in the middle of the table, you can decide whatever you want, but there has to be a centerpiece.
All right.
Take it away, Martin.
I was gonna let Raf go first.
Go ahead.
I'll let you fight it out amongst yourselves.
All right. So three guests. Well, actually, let's try and concentrate on the food first. So to start would definitely be some tandoori lamb,
Oh,
grilled tandoori lamb, right?
yeah, like a sizzler.
Yeah.
Oh.
Um,
That out.
main, let's say it's got to be Caribbean stewed chicken with rice and peas, definitely.
Nice.
Maybe that's because I'm craving it.
Little dumpling on the side. Pick a piece of fried plantain.
Definitely with some fried plantain, definitely.
Love
And
it.
dessert, maybe a nice passion fruit cheesecake.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm having that, definitely.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good.
Guess I've always thought about if I was to have the ultimate dinner party, 20 people that I'd invite, and it's so random, but I think it would be hilarious. So to try and condense it down into three is even more difficult.
Yeah.
So for me, they'd have to be kind of entertainers in their own right? So number one would definitely have to be Eric Cantona, right? Because of he's a very kind of interesting man. The older he gets, the more interesting I think he gets.
Mm. Yeah, that's a fantastic shout, actually. I like that.
Number two would be probably Noel Gallagher, I think.
Okay.
All right. Or no.
Okay.
No, Liam.
All right.
And number three,
Liam's the more lanky one, right?
yeah, he is. Yeah,
Is that right? And yeah, Noel's the
short.
sort of shorter one. Yeah. Okay.
Number three, jeez.
Yeah, Liam's probably better, man. He'll have a good drink and start a fight. Yeah. Go on.
And number three is quite tough, but let me think. Number three, probably I'd say I would say number 3, Chris Rock,
Nice.
because I love Chris Rock. So yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Brilliant. Oh, what a great 3. Well, fill those cups up then. What's in the drinks?
The cups, definitely Hein brandy.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, Hein all day, and some let's see, maybe some South African red.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, okay, so now you got to fill that centerpiece in the middle of the table.
Jesus.
What's there? Could be anything. Absolutely anything.
The
Go wild.
centerpiece would have to be a
It could be a little circuit board that you all have to put in a little transfuser or a little diode or something.
I think the centerpiece would be like a mechanical peacock.
A mechanical peacock.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Just to throw that curve.
Listen. You could have said a peacock and I would have asked you no questions. You said a mechanical peacock. What the fuck's a mechanical? What's it doing? What's it doing? What's mechanical about it? Everything?
Well, everything, right? So the wings, the feathers.
Its plume?
Yeah, the lot, right?
Oh, I love it.
So yeah.
That's very imaginative. I like that. I wouldn't have thought of mechanical peacock, but I think Eric Cantona would enjoy that, wouldn't he? He'd probably have a poem out of it by the end.
Yeah.
Wicked. Raf.
Well, I've had time to think.
And you still got nothing?
But I do have some instant go-tos for that kind of thing. So food-wise, I would have my mum's macaroni pie with roast beef, like literally her roast beef as well. It's slightly different to what other people make. It's nice.
Yeah.
Macaroni pie, roast beef. Don't know why that's even a combo, but it's a Trinidadian thing. So I'd have that. My guess would be 100% Denzel Washington will be on that table. I've got to have Denzel, man. He's a genius. Denzel, Joe Rogan, I think I'd have.
Yeah, good shout.
Yeah, I think I'd have Joe.
Or Joey Diaz.
Joey Diaz.
Rogan, Denzel.
Who's the other guy he has on there as well? The real conspiracy.
Sure, sometimes Eddie Bravo.
Eddie Bravo, yeah, that's the guy. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. So Denzel,
Joe,
Joe, and I'm thinking potentially Michelle Obama. I think I'm going there. Yeah, I think those 3 would be good. I have to have a woman on the table. It'd be a bit weird otherwise. But yeah, it's either her or Barack Obama, and I think so. Yeah. There.
Okay. Well, who would you prefer, Michelle or Barack?
Do you know what?
I think with that group, Michelle.
Yeah.
Like if I didn't have
Rogan
there, then I'd probably.
If it wasn't such a cockfest.
Yeah. Or it's not even that. It's just like what they would bring. I think some of them would bring something too similar. I think she'd bring something different.
Yeah. See, I think she'd probably tone it down a little bit, wouldn't she? They'll all be sort of like, oh, Denzel will probably be like, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Gilbert? Sorry?
Yeah, I mean, you're saying about the Obamas. I actually watched Michelle's documentary just the other day, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's an amazing woman.
Yeah, she is.
Absolutely amazing.
I will.
And yeah, centerpiece, I'd have a gin and tonic fountain. Just dip your glass into. And dessert would be cheesecake.
Rat nosy.
Yeah, cheesecake. I heard cheesecake a lot now. Yeah, so have you filled the cups with that gin fountain?
Yeah, pretty much. It's a gin liqueur.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you could have that as your drinks and then do another center fountain, or you can have another drink.
More gin.
More gin. I love it. Gents, listen, this has been an absolute pleasure. I think you guys have really, you've taken me on a really good journey. I've really enjoyed it. This is exactly why I'm doing the podcast. It's to just get another perspective. It's to have conversations like this. It's to stretch the boundaries a little bit. It's to take us into those slightly more uncomfortable zones, that we might not be able to do in wider society and what have you. But I think there was a lot of truth and honesty in those conversations from everybody, from Theo to Blue to yourself, Martin, and to yourself, Raf. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time out to come and join me.
No,
thank you very much.
Thanks so much for the invite, dude. Yeah.
Oh, let there be more, and long may it continue.
Yeah, exactly.
God bless you guys.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I am just going to lift up my edit card, which is that. But then, so that's it. So we're done. Thanks very much, man. That was
Thanks, Phil.
fucking brilliant, in fact.
Thanks. We'll do it again for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you guys want to hit up a little individuals, that would be great. I mean, I think we should do individuals anyway and then come back together as a group, because Martin, I am fascinated, and Raf the same. I think you guys are in a really intriguing position to doesn't always have to be about skin color and what have you. I'd love to hear more about the things that you guys are doing and interested in. Eh?
We'll do a football one.
Fuck off. If there was an analytics on the football contributions to the Wiseguys chats, mine's got to be really low down here.
You know what you should do, Phil? As a joke, as a wind-up, put on the group. Oh, it was going to be about some serious stuff, but we just did a great one on football. Like, Sharma will be gutted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I've never heard so much football chat.
Yeah.
Definitely Sharma, Power, and Gavin would be mortified.
Yeah.
We've got to get them engaged. Because that'd be good, man. That'd be good. But look, guys, we did 2 hours. A good sort of. I reckon we've done 2 hours 15, because there was about 10 minutes in the beginning there where we were just sort of, knocking around. And hopefully you don't get too many speeding tickets, Raf. After
You're slowing down, speeding up.
I saw he gave me a live feed on his journey, and I could see it jumping page. Whoa, okay, where's that? All right, now he's in Perivale. What? It's good. Good times. Well, look.
Thanks again, though, and it's nice to see you guys anyway. But
Good to see you, Raf.
Yeah, this was brilliant. Well done. All right.
Phil, take care.
Cheers, guys. Take care. Have a good night. Love. Peace.
And you, man. Bye.
On a train and a bus in a car on the way to your job. All alone with your kids, with your wife, or with your dog. You can listen anywhere. You can listen everywhere to the Philip Malowney podcast.